Greetings and love, everybody.
Greetings, greetings.
Arigani.
Habari gani?
That's
Zuri.
Shalom.
Hello, now we are live. Welcome everybody. It is a pleasure to have all of you here to celebrate this day of Martin Luther King. My name is Odilia Okonga, the founder of the African School Netherlands. And I'm here with my colleagues, my teammates, Ishmael, who always does the background IT work and is managing this Zoom connection now. I'm here also with Troni Ingati, who faithfully and efficiently organizes our activities by going through every detail meticulously, and who helped a great deal to organize this event, and Helga. Welcome all to this transnational Martin Luther King celebration. I will start with a powerful quote from Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who continues to give us as African people service by encouraging and fighting for the development and growth of our African mother tongues. And he says, "Our lives are a battlefield on which is fought a continuous war between the forces that are pledged to confirm our humanity and those determined to dismantle it. Those who strive to build a protective wall around it, and those who wish to pull it down, those who seek to mold it, and those committed to breaking it up, those who aim to open our eyes to make us see the light and look to tomorrow, and those who wish to lull us into closing our eyes." That is Ngugi wa Thiong'o. So for those of you who don't know, Martin Luther King is a special day dedicated for service unto others. And this is the service Ngugi wa Thiong'o is giving us in Africa, fighting for our languages, to develop our languages, our mother tongue, and let it grow. There is also this African proverb that goes like this: "Lack of knowledge is darker than the night." African School has chosen to serve by opening our community's eyes and making them see the light, look to tomorrow. We serve our community by offering knowledge through education that continues to remain elusive, hence pushing them into the darkest night. This knowledge includes African history, African languages like Swahili, and workshops aimed at restoration of our African identity and dignity in the diaspora. We also are busy developing Swahili books, African storybooks, and creating an e-learning platform to make this special education easily accessible to our community, not only here in Europe, but also across the Atlantic to our brothers and sisters. We are also launching a magazine to be able to speak in our own voices, tell our stories, and connect with other people of African descent across the globe. That is our responsibility. It is our hope that this flicker of light will bring a new dawn to those living in a space darker than the night. We are pleased to have all of you here, and we hope that by the time you leave this gathering, you will take with you the real meaning of service and make a personal decision to pass on the flame in whichever way you can, however small. Little by little, grow the bananas. That is another African proverb. So you don't need to do much. You just need to serve your fellow human being. I welcome you to this program. And Lisbeth is going to perform for us all the way from Suriname. Lisbeth, we appreciate you. Lisbeth is a musician. She's a music artist and producer, and is very active in art and culture, all the way from Suriname. Lisbeth, welcome.
Beautiful said, Odilia.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Everybody can do something, however small, whichever way. It can be to feed the hungry. It can be to tell a story, to, you know, even writers. They speak up for the weak in the society. Musicians do that. Or you can go to your neighbor and ask him, how are you? Because we're all human. Lisbeth, are you ready?
Yeah, I have, Ismael has the video, has the recording.
Yes, so I'll play that first.
Yes, please, thank you. Ismael, our technician. I will perform the most famous song that really fits today. And that is a song, the song, We Shall Overcome.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We shall overcome someday.
Okay, I
Ooh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. That we shall overcome
Wow. Thank you.
That was beautiful. That's beautiful.
Very nice.
Hello.
You get an applause.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
Yes, clap it up. Clap it up. Okay. Is she done? She's done, Adelia?
Yes, she's done.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful. All right, so thank you all for joining in for this lovely presentation where we honor Dr. Martin Luther King. My name is Haki Hamid, the Success Scholar. I'm here in Baltimore, Maryland, in Tubman City on the East Coast here. So I am just want to welcome you all on behalf of the Teaching Artists Institute on this International Day. Many people love and honor and appreciate the work of Dr. Martin Luther King. I actually met his son like 2 years ago, and we took some pictures and had a good conversation. So the struggle continues in terms of civil rights and international rights and understanding what he meant to us, and as well as his evolution. And that is essential for us because he was a man of courage that wanted freedom for his people. And so we just want to welcome you all on behalf of the Teaching Artists Institute. We are pleased to partner, of course, with the International African School, as well as later the International Civil Rights Center and Museum out of Greensboro, North Carolina. So Greensboro, North Carolina. So we are grateful for that. But I hope that we can get Sister up now she's going to actually moderate this discussion. And if we have any challenges, I'll come back in because she is in Ghana right now, West Africa, where she moved to maybe 6 months ago, but she can tell you how long she has lived in Ghana. She was back here in the Baltimore area for some time, and she represents Black Diamonds. So she's going to tell you a little bit about that, and I'll just get out of her way. So we will be back to share more about Teaching Artists Institute, but I want to encourage you all to go to the Facebook page and share this to your page and other groups so that everybody can enjoy in this international celebration and honoring of Dr. King. So Onokwele, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Loud and
Can you hear me
clear,
okay?
loud and clear. Thumbs up if everybody can hear. Onokwele, thumbs up, everybody.
Okay.
Okay, everybody can hear you. So you got the mic, hold it down, and you're looking good over in Ghana, all that fresh sun and everything. So go ahead and flow, sister. Thank you.
Yeah. Right. Actually, I've been here for 4 months this week. So, Haki, the last time you saw me, I was a little lighter. So I've been kissed by the sun, getting all that good vitamin D here in the motherland. And I'm sending healing vibrations from the epicenter of the ancestors. I'm just minutes away from the dungeons that they transported millions of our ancestors to, what we now call the divided states. I'm so glad to be here. As Haki said, I lived in Baltimore for quite some time, and that's when I started the Black Diamonds Girls Club, actually last year, but the year before that actually, and then COVID-19 hit and put a big dent in that. But we had gotten off to a good start. But just to give you a little background, just very brief background, I was a National Park Ranger right outside of Baltimore in Towson, Maryland, and I was working on a slave plantation for real. So there, it's called Hampton National Historic Site, and there for 13 years, I told the stories of our ancestors who were in bondage. And I do have a special connection with them. And my name, by the way, means it means truth in the language of Ga from Ghana. And I legally changed my name years ago. So that's what I do. I tell the truth about what happened to us and where we are now and the greatness that we come from. So there's no shame in anything that's happened. Matter of fact, the more I learn, the more I realize what greatness I'm from. So the Black Diamonds Girls Club, we're doing it here in Ghana. And as I stated earlier, I've been here for 4 months this week. And a month ago, on December the 5th, we did our first outreach program, and this is something we're going to do from now on, at least once a month, and then hopefully very soon we'll go twice a month to Sekandi Female Prison. It's in the western region of Ghana, and we have partnered with the prison. Now, prisons around the world are just it's a bad place, and I don't need to tell you about the prison systems in the U.S. for those who are in the U.S. And believe it or not, for those who are not in the U.S., you might think it's better in the U.S. than other countries, but it's not. The majority of the people who are incarcerated in the U.S. are Black bodies, but we're talking about Ghana right now. So the women there in Sekandi prison, and we're going to have some pictures of us there. There are only 20 of them. And right across the street, there is the male prison. There's 700 men in the male prison. But the women who are there, the 20 of them, they're not hardened criminals. Most of the women there are there because of debts. It's one woman that I encountered. She's in prison because she owed 20,000 Ghana CDs, which is about 3,500 CDs, and she has to spend 5 years in prison. There's another woman that the deputy warden told me about, that her husband, they broke up for a while, and then they got back together, and her boyfriend she had at the time, they broke up, but when she got back with her husband, she had nothing to do with it, but her husband and some men went to her ex-boyfriend and castrated him. They put her in jail for 25 to 30 years, even though she had nothing to do with the actual castration. There was another woman that I met there who actually gave birth to the baby. And when we gave the presentation, we talked to them. I'm a vegan. I'm not trying to convert people to veganism, but then again, I am. But even if you're not going to be a vegan, you should eat more vegetables. So we brought food for them. And the food that they give them in the prison only amounts to 1 CD and 60 pesos, which is not even $1 worth of food a day. And we brought this food and they were just so thankful. We brought sanitary pads. And this is what we'll be doing as an organization for those in the community. I just met with a council of elders in a nearby village where I am here at the University of Cape Coast and Capral. And we will set up a clubhouse there. We will make reusable sanitary pads. Ghana is ridden with trash. So we don't want to add any more trash to that with disposable sanitary pads. So we'll teach the women and young girls to make the reusable pads and sell them, and they'll also consume them for themselves, because I'm in a rural area and many of the girls can't afford a pack of sanitary pads, which is about 7 CDs, which is a little over $1 a pack. So we'll train them, and so they'll learn that skill. We're also going to teach them academics, teach them about their history. Even though I told you we're so close to the dungeons, the average Cape Coast person, Elmina person, they don't even know what happened in those dungeons. All they know is someplace where they see Americans in particular, but people from the diaspora, could be in the Caribbean as well, or UK. They just see them both place, and it's an opportunity to sell them some things. So we're going to teach them about this history, and also just teach the young women or young girls, teenage girls, because we're targeting girls 13 to 18 years of age, to become phenomenal women. You don't know what you don't know. So we're going to help with the prevention of premature pregnancies and just do what we can here in Mother Africa. I'm still working with my board in Baltimore. So we're going to have a sister organization. So we'll bridge that gap. So the young women will go to the US, providing this COVID-19 fizzles out. And I'm telling you right now, I'm not taking a vaccine, but, and they can come, the sisters from the US, Baltimore, can come here to Ghana. The more we know about each other, the better this world would be. And this is why people like myself have heard the call to come back to Mother Africa to help build her. But for those of you who don't want to live here, please at least come here one time before you close your eyes for the last time to actually feel the energy, because it's nothing like coming home. And that could be Ghana or any other place on the continent of Africa. But at least come one time and help support, and let's build the bridges, because we have work to do here as well as the U.S. and other parts of the diaspora. So I wasn't timing myself, so I'm gonna make sure I don't go over. So Haki, I'm gonna introduce our next speaker, Dr. Najiri from Germany. And this is such a beautiful and powerful forum, because here we have people of African descent from 4 different continents on this particular Zoom
Yes,
meeting.
I'm on the I'm oh boy. I'm right in the middle of it. I sent out the link.
Mute yourself.
You sent out a link for what? Let me see. Let me look at the chats. Okay.
See the speaker on the Crowley?
Are we ready for Dr. Rahab Najiri? Are you ready? From
Yes.
Germany? Okay, I'm going to introduce you.
Thank you.
She is a historian and passionate about African culture. She is a lecturer at University of Cologne and a board member of board member of the community activist group Cologne for Frundi, which successfully voted the first Black man just last September 2020 to the city of Cologne as the first Black city council member. So she was a part of that. And what she's going to talk about today is the role of women in Mau Mau resistance. So Dr. Najiri, please, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that kind introduction. I welcome everybody in my home in Cologne. So today I decided to talk about the Mau Mau women because I just think they are an important part of public service and what the Martin Luther King Day stands for. So once again, thank you very much. I would like to acknowledge that I'm not here alone, but I'm with those who have come before me. And through their courage, fearlessness, love, power, I am because they are. With those whose names we know and those that we don't, we still acknowledge them and remember them. On this day, I want to honor and acknowledge the great women of the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement, women such as Coretta Scott King, Betty Shabazz, who are committed to serving their communities hand in hand with these great men. I also acknowledge Winnie Mandela and Wangari Maathai for their service to the whole continent. And I do also acknowledge my own mother for her service and struggles to our own family. So Dr. King recognized the power of service, and he once said that everybody can be great because anybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. And this words really made me think about the Mau Mau women. So although it may seem as if there's no connection between what I would like to talk about today, but for me, these women were part of the service to my country, Kenya, and also to my community. And so I do want to celebrate these women, the women of Mau Mau, whom history has forgotten, and their history or their struggle is always written out in the anti-colonial war or rebellion of the Mau Mau. These women provided a blueprint for African women, not only in Kenya, but across the continent. And today, from a global perspective, we place them on this global celebration. I understand, I'll just put the short word, so LMD, as I did for us as children of Mother Africa to work together and to never forget the service that our people, especially Black women, did and continue to do up to this day. When we include Black women, like the Mau Mau women on this day, then the MLK Day or the Martin Luther King Day, we empower ourselves, strengthen our communities, bridge barriers, create solutions to social problems, and together we come closer to Dr. King's vision of a beloved community, which then translates to the fact that the women of Mau Mau and their struggle and for our liberation was for our beloved country and for our communities. As a historian, I find that there are parallel histories that are taking place both in Kenya and Black America. Dr. King played a role in the American civil rights and sought equality and human rights for African Americans, the economically disadvantaged, and all victims of injustice through peaceful protest. At the same time, or at the same historical time, but on a different space, in Kenya, the Mau Mau rebellion was rebelling against the British colonists who sought for liberation for our motherland and our human rights. The case of Mau Mau anti-colonial struggles illustrates the mutuality between colonial hegemony and subaltern counter-hegemony in which women were at the center of it. As we all know, or some might not know, the Mau Mau War was between 1952 to 1960, and it played a major role as a Pan-Africanist liberation movement, which highly motivated, for instance, South African freedom icon Nelson Mandela, who highlighted its Pan-African role upon his release in 1990. And so in July 1990, Mandela visited Kenya and openly recognized the role of Mau Mau women in his own inspiration as a freedom fighter. Accompanied by Winnie Mandela, he spoke about the women. Women played a critical role in this revolution because its ultimate triumph depended upon the success or successful appeals to women and families to supply resources to nourish it. The Mau Mau women were full of grace, as the quote I read before, were full of grace and souls generated by love for their people and country through their involvement in the liberation struggles of independence in Kenya. A scholar, Tabitha Kononga, and whom I would like to acknowledge, one of the participants who is here, Ms. Njeri Kamau, who introduced me to the author. She argues that the women of the Mau Mau were often strongholds in families. Initially, as men fled to the forest, but women were not allowed. But in time, more and more women realized or became rebels and become invaluable allies to the men. To begin with, they began to allow single and widowed women who were trusted to remain secretive. In her analysis, some became forest fighters, and some were even introduced into the inner secret council, which was formerly only for men. Kanango has cited one woman, and I will just mention a few of them. She has cited one woman called Wanjiro Nyamatura, who was known as a hardcore rebel. She was respected by all rebels, both men and women. She was in charge of distributing food and gathered intelligence. In her view, she changed the perception on how other rebels viewed women and eventually appreciated their role in the revolutionary movement. Field Marshal Muthoni Karimi, who continued to wear Mau Mau dreadlocks that she used to wear while in the forest 50 years after Kenya's independence, was also one woman who was strongly involved in the Mau Mau movement. Being the only woman to be accorded the title of a field marshal, Muthoni must have been a tough fighter. There was also another Mau Mau leader woman, Wambui Wakinyari, whose rebel name was Matron. She came from a village and was in the Mau Mau administrative structure. She was in the Department of Medicine. So she was a nurse, and she attended to Mau Mau rebels and even to other women and other men once they came to the forest. There was also another fighter, Haraka. She was also one of a general's bodyguard. She also served food to this bodyguard, but she was never allowed to carry a gun. But nevertheless, she was the bodyguard, so you couldn't get through her. With the rebel ranks like that of another woman called Kohonokia, she was a very young woman. She was a rebel fighter like her male counterparts. There was also Jerena wa Moheni, also called Mudhoni wa Kiando, who was also a very tough and powerful woman. Another woman who is really recognized as a rebel was Badi Wakamau, and she used to bring food to the Mau Mau soldiers while in the forest. In 1953, she played a key role in guiding the Mau Mau oath. She could also team up with others to lure mature girls to the oathing ceremony, which was mostly not accepted according to the Kikuyu tradition, but she nevertheless did it. So these women expressed their determination to remain in the forest, although life was very hard, because what they saw was better to die in the forest than be slaves in their own house. It is important that we keep the spirit and the struggle of these women alive and the next generation to make sure that history does not forget them. And so on this day, I would like to acknowledge the service of these women. I personally am following the path of these great women, also committing myself into doing community work and continuing to where these women left off or left. This is why I decided to name some of these women or women fighters and position them back into our history and into our narratives. As a historian, I have dedicated myself into sharing my knowledge with my community here in Germany, in particular in Cologne, and transferring that knowledge for the visibility to our political power and education. As an active member of the International African School, we have taken upon ourselves to continue re-educating and shifting the negative associations toward African languages by offering Swahili languages and African histories, pre-slavery and colonization, because we were the first people. It is important that we first deal with our own history and decolonize our minds in order to be able to progress here in Germany or even in Europe. We must unearth our histories and stories and position ourselves within this society that continues to write us out of history. Last year, as the moderator introduced, I ran for the city of for a seat in the city council as the only Black woman. But I did not get in, but we had one Black man who got in, and that is all we needed and wanted. So I'm still very happy and excited about that. So it's important for our African communities here in Germany to know that we can bring change when we work together and uplift each other. So political education and making sure that my community understands their rights, exercise their rights, and fight for their rights is one way that I'm giving and trying to give back to my community. So I want to thank you all. I was told it's 10 minutes and I tried to keep time. Thank you very much. Asanteni sana. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I just have a quick question, and we're going to open up questions to the audience, and feel free at the end of this discussion today, after you've heard from all the panelists, place your questions in the chat box, and then we will answer your questions. We'll address them to the panelists. But I have a question. Since I've been here in Ghana, I sat and talked with a sister from South Africa, and she was talking about the violence, the sexual violence that is a readily occurring thing in South Africa now. And whereas here in Ghana, you know, men like you and all, but you don't have that fear. And she said she had a true fear of that in South Africa. But the women that you just described, I mean, they were badass. So what shifted?
I think what happened is that, you know, just like in the civil rights movement or in the Black Power movement, women were not placed at the foreground, although, without the women, there would not have been the revolution, right? And it's the same thing happening in Kenya. These women were at the forefront, but you just write them out of history, and then all the glory is given to the men. And so that's why I thought that today is just an important day to name these women and put them back into history. And giving them name also gives them life. It's by naming and empowering them, and also empowering ourselves, especially if you are the young generation of Africans, where we are saying Africa will rise. And Africa can only rise if we also deal with our own history and acknowledge our own history and put it out in the front and say, yes, there were men who were great men, but there were also a great and courageous women who did a lot for the struggle and anti-colonial struggles in the continent. And I just think that they are left out. It's the same thing with the climate change movement. Everybody's talking about the climate change movement, but nobody's talking about one of my role model, Wangari Maathai. She was talking about what is happening now already in the 70s. And so I just think that these women, especially African women coming from the African continent, just need to be, put more up in the open, to be mentioned often, so that they just become names that also our children know who these women are. And for me, learning about the Mau Mau women was just empowering because, and I can see her, Ms. Njeri Kamau, I'm just trying to learn the Kikuyu language, and she encouraged me by showing me some of the videos that I could actually listen to and learn my own history, and and talk about this history that most of us, even who come from Kenya, haven't really dealt with it. And so as a historian, I just think it's my responsibility to dig deeper and do research into that topic, and put it out in the open so that we can learn and educate each other, and as Ngugi wa Thiong'o would say, decolonize our mind and our souls by learning our own history. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Doctor. I mean, it's wonderful. We do need to get that out there, because it's, instead of it being his story, we need to learn the true story. So thank you so much. Our next speaker is Vamba Sharif. She's a novelist, essayist, I'm butchering it, someone who writes essays, teacher of creative writing, and she was born in Liberia, but she currently lives in the Netherlands. And she's going to talk to us today about why don't we hear, I'm sorry, let me get this right. Samore Toure and the African resistance to colonization. So this is a perfect segue to what Dr. Njeri just talked about, decolonizing the mind. So without further ado, Mr. Vamba.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Mr. I'm sorry, she.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Anukwale, and thank you so much, Dr. Njeri, for your celebration of the power of women in Africa and the African diaspora. Some years ago, I traveled through West Africa to research a novel about one of the greatest figures of African history, a man who fought for 20 years, fought the French, and for so many years also the English, to try to free, to decolonize his empire. During my research, I traveled through 7 West African countries. Those countries included Liberia, where I was born, Sierra Leone, Guinea, Mali, Ivory Coast, Burkina Faso, Senegal, Benin. I traveled through all these countries because the man I'm going to talk about, I'm going to share his story with you. His life touched all the people in all these countries in present-day Africa. During my research in Senegal, I stumbled upon a fact, and that was that there was someone else. There was a writer and this African icon who was already trying to chronicle the life of this great African warrior and fighter. And the man who was in this synagogue was Sembène Ousmane. Most of you know that the father of the African cinema was and is Sembène Ousmane. But what most people don't know was that for 40 years, Sembène Ousmane had been trying to make a film about this African resistance fighter and freedom fighter, Samori Touré. 40 years. Sembène Ousmane, born in Senegal, very rebellious. There is a story about him fighting his French teacher, slapping his French teacher, because the French teacher had denigrated his grandmother. And so he got angry and slapped his teacher, and he was expelled from school. So this Sembène Ousmane grew up with this sense of Africanness, pride of being an African. So he wanted to make this ultimate film about this ultimate African hero, Samori Touré. And for 40 years, he tried to make this film, and he did not succeed. And why he did not succeed, it was because he did not have the finance. He needed millions. He needed at least $50 million to make this epic film about Samori Touré. It did not work. So when I stumbled upon this fact that there was someone who was trying to do the same thing I've been trying to do, to write a novel, to make a film about this great hero, I decided this was an extra incentive for me to continue to write a novel that I could share with the world and with the African brothers and sisters all over the world. So I'm talking about 2003 when I made this journey through West Africa. And from that day up to this day, I've been writing this novel, and the novel is finished now. The novel is with my agent in the US, and hopefully sometime next year or this year, a good publisher will love it and decide to publish it. Who was Samori Touré? Samori Touré was born in present-day Guinea in a very small village of no consequence, a small place. I think many, like 50 or 100 people. What was unique about this man? He was born into a family of weavers, which was very, in the Mande culture, the Mandingo culture, weavers were not that important. There was a caste culture. It's like in India, which I don't condone, but that's my heritage. So you had this caste system in the Mande culture, and somebody belonged to a family or clan of weavers. But he took up trade. So he was trading with Liberia, with the Liberians, because Liberia had been founded by African Americans who had returned back to Africa after centuries of bondage. And so somebody was doing trading with Liberians on the coast and with the English in Freetown. So one day, in his absence, his mother was captured by a ruler and enslaved. So Samori returned from the journey, and he was told that his mother had been captured. So Samori decided to go and confront this king. So when he came to the king, he told the king, I'm the son of this mother, of this woman, Masarona, and I came to buy her freedom. So the king asked him, by what means do you want to do that? So somebody said, I want to be your slave in her stead so that she can gain her freedom. And the king agreed. So somebody became a slave for this king whose name was Serebama. What happened, as it usually happens in history, this king was so enamored with Samori, so admired his talents, that he drew him closer to him and taught him everything. So Samori grew up to become a great fighter and one of the advisors of this man. And he became also powerful. In the end, he rose up against his king and he conquered him. So that's just an aspect of the story of this great man that I wrote about in this epic novel. It's 700 pages long. I spent more than 10 years writing it. So what I'm going to do is I will tell you, I'll read an excerpt from the novel, which is very exclusive. I mean, you are the first, hearing this, because it's yet to be published. So I'm reading the first time we get to meet, the reader meets somebody in my novel. The title of the novel will be The Empire's Son. The first thing Zaiwolo, the main character of the novel, noticed about somebody when he met him was his gaze. It was hard and piercing, a look capable of paralyzing an adversary. There lingered about him an intimidating silence, which, as with everything that had formed him, had been cultivated during his days as a slave. The trader turned slave, then warrior, and now king, had learned that silence bred mystery, and it was to this mystery and nothing else that he owed his existence. The dark and glossy skin of his face gleamed in the flickering light of his sofa's torches. His jaw was slender, his chin sharp, and his wrists were marked by vitiligo. Between his brows and around his nose ran two furrows, which gave his face an extraordinary intensity rarely found in other men. Outside Misaidu's walls, far from the eyes of the sentinels, somebody sat cross-legged on the grass. His posture clearly showed that he had come to issue orders and expected to be obeyed to the letter. A sword rested on his lap. His back was as straight as a pole. It was believed that he decapitated his enemies with that sword. Beside him lay his javelin, which served as a weapon and staff, for his hands were often restless if there was nothing to hold on to. And further on, another excerpt. Samori mounted his horse, Kausu, which had been with him for years. Since the onset of his conquering streak in Lower Konya, Samori had developed the habit of pausing outside the gates of each conquered city or town, as if to appraise it. He gazed at Misadu now, which appeared dormant in the distance. Although the city was not yet part of his possessions, he had his greatest scholar as an ally. Misadu was also coveted by men like Sai of the Banguna Mountain, another ruler who was about his age. But his greatest adversary in Konya was and remained Serebrama, the man who captured his mother and enslaved him. Somebody vowed to conquer Misadu, not only because of his strategic location as a trading post that connected the savannah to the forest and the coast of Liberia, but also because of his past. Misadu was the mother of all towns and villages in Konya, a place from where people had migrated to populate the savannah. Part of him were connected to Misadu in the person of his mother, whose past was rooted in the forest. The rest of him was steeped in the old empire belonging to Sundiata Keita, the man whose fame had reached the four corners of the earth. Every time he thought of his origins, and he often did so in those
Hello,
early days
Vamba.
of empire building, yeah. Somebody,
Vamba, can you,
yes.
in the essence, it's beautiful, but in the essence of time, I'm going to have to cut you
All
short.
right, thank you. Yes.
And plus, I wanted to ask you a question before
Yeah.
we get to our next speaker. But in the chat box, someone wrote that you have written many books. And at the beginning of your talk, You said that you're going to publish this one in the United States. Did I
Yes.
hear that correctly?
Yes.
Are they published on the continent as well? Do you have, are your books on
No,
the continent?
my books are in English and other languages. They are not in African languages, no, because I came here, I came to the Netherlands as a refugee. I went to school here, read law, and my first book is actually about the founding of Liberia with the return of African Americans to Africa in the 19th centuries. That book is in English and it's also available in Liberia. Yes, it can be found in Liberia, in the US or through Amazon. Yes.
But what about the countries on the continent that speak English? I mean, what are your goals as far as having them distributed there? Because they do need to know, or we need to know this history or these histories.
Yeah. Yes, a friend of mine, Wyatt Moore, who is also a writer based in New York. We have a bookstore in Monrovia, Liberia, and so we're trying to distribute the books in Liberia, and also hopefully when the book is published in the US, I would like to work together with Bibi Bakari Yusuf of Cassava Republic as a publisher based in Nigeria to try to make these books available for my brothers and sisters in Africa. So that's my hope, and and I'm involved with organizations not only in the diaspora but also in Africa. I've attended festivals. I've been to South Africa. I've been to Nigeria, to other places on the continent to celebrate and to share our stories. And Samori is just one of many stories. Samori was actually greater than Shaka Zulu, who is so very famous in the West. But achievements wise, Samori was much greater than Shaka Zulu. And so his story is very relevant.
Wow.
Because according to Semben Usman, Samori came four great rulers: Napoleon, Charles the Great, Attila the Horn, and Peter the Great. So if one leader could encapsulate four great rulers of the West, you can just imagine who this person must have been, how remarkable he must have been. And so this is my most ambitious novel. And I felt that because we're celebrating a great man today, that I should share people the story of someone who came before him and who might have inspired him directly or indirectly. Samori was absolutely a source of inspiration for many African freedom fighters in Africa and in diaspora.
That's wonderful. Since you mentioned Shaka Zulu, the reason why we all know about Shaka Zulu is because of that iconic movie or miniseries that was done on him in the 1980s. So something similar needs to be done on Torre as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yes.
I'm going to make it my goal, my lifelong goal to make a movie about somebody. It has to be done because he was such a remarkable person, human being. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that very, very great history. I know I learned something, and we'll ask more questions at the
part. Yes. I think we have Mr. Swain in the house.
Pardon me?
We have Mr. Swain in the house.
Yes, so I'm getting ready to introduce him. So, Mr. John Swain of the Civil Rights Center, we ask for you to speak now and share with us what you're doing. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity to join you all and talk about the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. Here at the International Civil Rights Center and Museum, we focus on nonviolence as well. As you all may be fully aware, the International Civil Rights Center and Museum came into being on February 1 of 2010 when we opened our doors to the public and launched this powerful educational attraction. And so many people who think of in terms of the civil rights struggle, think of the violent pieces of it. And the four young men who sat down at the FW White's only lunch counter, FW Woolworth's White's only lunch counter on February 1 of 1960, did so with the full knowledge that they had one thing that Dr. King used to talk about, and that is cashing the promissory note. Dr. King understood that in 1868, the US government promulgated the 14th Amendment ratified and promulgated the 14th Amendment to the US Constitution, which guaranteed all citizens who are born or naturalized here in the United States full and equal protection under the law. Now, you may recall that after, here in the US, after Reconstruction, when the slaves were free in the South, the Ku Klux Klan and Jim Crow advocates want to work to suppress the full impact of what it meant to be a citizen. And when Dr. King says to the nation, we are here to cash a promissory check, a check that is long overdue, he was talking about the full impact and the full reach of the 14th Amendment to the US Constitution. African Americans would wait nearly 90 years before they were granted that protection under the law. When African American students from North Carolina A&T, David Richmond, Frank McCain, Ezell Blair, and Dr. Joseph McNeil, when they came to this very location 61 years ago, this next month, February 1, when they came here, it's because they understood the teachings of Dr. Martin Luther King, that we should be treated with basic dignity and respect. These young men, the A&T 4 that we call them, they had studied our US constitutionally and they knew it inside and out. And they knew that if they came to the FW Woolworths here in Greensboro, North Carolina, they sat down like respectful citizens in society and order a simple cup of coffee. They should have been served at the whites only lunch counter. They were denied that service for the full day. And as Dr. King preached, nonviolent. This was something that he had also learned from Gandhi, nonviolent disobedience. Do what you are supposed to do and in a non-threatening way, and let the perpetrators who are advancing Jim Crow regimes be seen as the real fools in society. So those young men simply sat down at the counter and requested service here at Woolworths. And they were denied, and they continued to sit quietly, waiting to be served a cup of coffee. By the end of the day, when the store had closed, they still had not been served. But they returned the next day, and the next day, and the next day, non-violently. There were threats against their lives, but they continued to return until July 25th of 1960, when the FW Woolworth lunch counter was finally desegregated. So part of the legacy of Dr. King in helping American citizens to stay alive is know your rights, advance those rights, teach those rights. And one of my best friends who recently passed away, she was the curator for this museum and the former director of the museum. She would often say to me when I came to work for this institution, if there are things that you do not know, learn them. If there are things that you have mastered, teach them. My background is as a CPA, certified public accountant, and I'm the head of the International Civil Rights Center and Museum. I've run this institution since 2014 as the CEO of the place, and continued in my role of Director of Finance, or CFO of the institution. But what I've come to realize is that all of my educational upbringing has prepared me for a moment such as this. I was only a young kid when I would see Dr. King on television. I actually integrated my first grade class. When I would look around my classrooms, there were only maybe 2 or 3 African American students in a classroom of about 30. So growing up, that was my surrounding. And I came to know these students that I was surrounded by as just friends, colleagues, classmates. Race did not come into the picture. Race did not come into the picture because we were integrating and doing something very powerful, taking a group of young kids in a non-threatening way and advancing this notion that we can live together in society and go about our normal lives and not have such distinction. What I have learned, looking back and connecting with some of the people that I grew up with, they grew into their racism. And that is the unfortunate piece. They have grown into their racism while I have continued to look back to my upbringing and move into the future, as Dr. King says, at a time where Blacks and whites can walk hand in hand. So at this Museum of Civil Rights Reflection, we educate the world. We have groups from all over the globe that travel to here to learn about civil and human rights. And that's what we are most known for, nonviolent civil disobedience. And I think for people who care about justice, who care about freedom, who care about equality, core democratic values, they would look to Dr. King and say, a leader who was before his time, way before his time. But I can only imagine what our world would be like if Dr. King were still alive today. Now, I'm not a bloviator. I like to engage with people. So if there are some particular questions that you all have, I'm quite interested in learning from you as well, because this is my first opportunity to engage with such a wonderful audience.
Well, we're holding our questions to the end.
Okay.
From the participants. So please stay on. And I had the fortune of visiting your museum in 2019. I came with the National Association of Black Storytellers, and your exhibit. Yes. And I remember seeing you.
I remember. I asked you all to write a narrative for the museum.
Yes.
I remember.
And talk about storytellers. I mean, your docents. I mean, well, your tour guides. And I don't even want to call them a tour guide, because that's really understating. I mean, just phenomenal. And your exhibits are phenomenal. So hopefully, once this COVID-19 lifts, people will actually be able to go to your museum, because it's not the same as going virtually. I know it's not. I mean, I just love your museum. I really do.
Well, we have, during the COVID shutdown, what we've done was taken the opportunity to grow the museum. One of the things that I've been wanting to do is reach across the globe even further, because I've had lots of teachers like yourself who would come here, and when they would finish the tour, they would say, wow, I'd love to bring all my kids here. I'd love to bring all my kids here, but it's not possible. So what we've done during the shutdown was I brought my staff back together, and I said, now is an opportunity for us to take the museum to the world. We've recorded the virtual tours, so I've recorded and uploaded 7 of my senior interpreters. We've got a few more that I'm going to advance, but now is a great opportunity for people all over the world to even just log on and take the self-guided film tour. And our engaging interactive tours, they're quite powerful. We have about 300 people on an interactive tour today. So they're moving quite along. But all of that to say, we are an educational resource, and many young African-American children that have visited this museum would walk away and say, oh, I didn't know that white people were involved in the civil rights movement. And one was quoted in a magazine as saying, I'm going to have to go back to school and rethink what I think about white people. I didn't know this. So this is a powerful institution that teaches these lessons, no matter how you slice it and dice it. There are great lessons to be learned. Dr. King's influence in the church, we all know that at the end of his life, most of the church was pulling away from him. They had seen folks being lynched and their homes burn out, all of that. But Dr. King continued to say, let's stay the course. Let's stay the course. And when we had the 1963 March on Washington, it was an opportunity for the whole nation to see the power of African Americans and what can be done. The Montgomery bus boycotts was another opportunity. He was involved in so much, and his work, his interactions kept a lot of people alive, because we could have easily taken up arms and said, okay, we're going to fight. But we've never had the most powerful weapons to fight back with. So the legacy of Dr. King will live forever for those who are just willing to be part of that nonviolent movement.
And I want to speak to just very, very briefly to that nonviolent, because when I went to the museum, that I did not know that they weren't the first people who sat at the counter weren't the ones where the hot coffee was being poured on, and it actually went very, very peacefully. I was shocked, but the images we do see are the ones that are being accosted. But I want to speak to the strength of those brothers and sisters who endured that, because that took way more strength than I know I had, because I would have come up swinging. So that took a lot more courage to do that.
That is true. And we've heard that quite a bit. One of the exhibits that we're getting ready to launch from here is called Sit-In Nation. It's an exhibit that's being underwritten by the Fresh Market food chain here in Greensboro. But we're going to talk about the fact that Greensboro was not the first sit-in movement. It was not the first one that occurred. People lost their lives just for going to a whites-only lunch counter and sitting down. They had hot coffee poured on them. They had cigarette butts put out in their hair. They had eggs and sugar poured all over their bodies. A lot of that you're going to see in the deeper South, in Georgia and Alabama, over in Nashville, Tennessee. That's where a lot of that terrible violence took place. But for Greensboro has always fashioned itself as a progressive city. And I say to that, there's a problem there if you're not following the law and advancing people's equal rights under the Constitution. I don't know how you can really call yourself a nonviolent progressive city. But here in Greensboro also, we are surrounded by a large number of Jewish people and a large number of Quakers. And if you know anything about the Quaker faith and religion, they are by nature a nonviolent people. Now, they will fight for your rights to be free. But that's not necessarily to say that they want you in the church with them. They want you sitting at their table, but they believe in freedom.
Now, we're going to continue this conversation when we open it up, but we thank you so much for being with us. And we're going to move on to our next speaker in the interest of time, but we're going to change the format just a little bit. So, Sister Kim, can you hear me? Would you like to introduce Wali Mo? Brother, I'm Sada. Kim, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I wanted Kim to introduce you, give you a rightful introduction. I know I went on your website, and gosh, I mean, you have done so much. I'll be here all day trying to talk about it, but if Kim's not available, I can do my best if you just give me the liberty. So this brother that's getting ready to speak, he is born and raised in Harlem, USA. And he is the poster child, if you will, of civil rights, those iconic images that we see. And he was just born into the Mecca of civil rights. In his bio, he talks about how he actually he grew up in the projects that right by the harbor, if you correct me if I'm wrong, that the Honorable Marcus Garvey had his ships in. So, I mean, when I just read that, that was powerful. But you've done so much. Director of the Political Affairs for the Congress of Racial Equity. This is 1972. So it is still in the heart of the civil rights movement. You went to Syracuse University, where you founded a student group. And let me see if I can get that. What is the name of the student group that you founded?
Student African American Society.
Yes. And you've been to the continent. You helped with the African Liberation Day, forming that, and fought against apartheid. It just goes on and on and on. So without further ado, I would like to introduce, and I hope I'm not butchering your name, Wali Mo Amsada,
okay.
AKA Brown. So you can tell us the proper pronunciation of your name.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, my dear sister. And thank you for everybody who's already spoken here. And thank you for the invitation to speak. Sister Kim had asked me to give a keynote address, so I'm going to try to do that. Appropriate pronunciation of my name would be Malimo Amsada. Full is Malimo Kwasikwaja Amsada, but I was born Edward H. Brown Jr. So people commonly call me Brother Amsada. That's the name I was given in Senegal in 1995. I want to go right into the remarks that I had made again. Again, my name is Malimo Kwasikwaja Amsada. I'm the coordinator for the Pan-African Federalist Movement in North America, and I'm also the author of The New Pan-Africanism 2020, which is a book that was published earlier in this decade. But enough about me. Let's talk about the man of the hour, who is Martin Luther King. Last Friday, January 15th, 2021, marked the 92nd anniversary of the birth of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. He was born on January 15th, 1929, and he transitioned on April 4th, 1968. I remember being on work-study duty in Kimball Dormitory as a junior and a 20-year-old student activist at Syracuse University on April 4th, when I first learned that Dr. King had just been assassinated. Dr. King was 39 at the time of his death. The relative young ages of Dr. King in 1968 and myself, 39 and 20 respectively, speaks to the central and critical role of young people in the struggle for the liberation and political unification of African people. Along this same vein, it's worthy to note that Marcus Garvey was only 32 when his organization convened the first convention of African peoples of the world 100 years ago. This gathering assembled 25,000 Black people from 40 different countries for the entire month of August. And that's where we got the colors red, black, and green. And again, Garvey was only 32 at the time of this historical and consequential African Global Convention in August 1920. And King was only 34 in August of 1963 when he gave his most famous speech at the historic March on Washington. But from the very beginning, Dr. King saw his role as a drum major in the universal struggle for African freedom for all people of African ancestry. Just 3 months after King had won his first victory in the year-long Montgomery boycott in December of 1956, he found himself in West Africa at the independence celebration of Ghana on March 6, 1957. And while there, he met Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who became Ghana's first prime minister in 1957, his first president in 1960, and the most consequential Pan-African in the second half of the 20th century. And as Dr. King observed the old Union Jack flag of England coming down and the beautiful multicolored flag of Ghana going up, he turned to Congressman Adam Clayton Powell from Harlem on his right and Dr. Ralph Bunche, the first Black Nobel Peace Prizer, on his left. And he said, that old flag coming down represents an old order passing away. And that new flag represents a new order coming in. Dr. King was very moved by his experience in Ghana and spoke of it often, most notably at his own Abyssinia Baptist Church immediately upon his return in a sermon entitled Birth of a Nation. And later in a wider speech to a wider audience, Remaining Awake Through a Great Revolution. Dr. King always put Ghana's independence in Africa in the context of the freedom struggle of Black people in America. He saw a strong connectivity between the Black freedom struggles of African people on both sides of the Atlantic. In the essay entitled The Time for Freedom Has Come, which was written in the New York Times Magazine on September 29, 1961, Dr. King noted, and I quote, many students, when pressed to express their inner feelings, identify themselves with the students of Africa. The liberation struggles in Africa have been the greatest single influence of African-American students. Frequently, I hear them say that if our brothers and sisters in Africa can break the bonds of colonialism, surely Black people in America can break Jim Crow. African leaders such as Nkrumah from Ghana, Inekwe from Nigeria, Tom Mboya from Kenya are popular heroes on the Black college campuses. Many groups demonstrated and protested when the Congo leader Patrice Lumumba was assassinated. Part of the impatience of Black youth stems from their observations that change is taking place rapidly in Africa and other parts of the world, but comparatively slow in the South. That's the end of the quote. In the New World Order that Dr. King spoke of on March 6, 1957 in Ghana, reached its zenith 37 years later with the swearing in of Nelson Mandela as the first president of South Africa on May 11, 1994. Dr. King paid his respects to another Pan-African freedom fighter, the aforementioned Marcus Garvey, on a trip to Jamaica with his wife on June 20th, 1965. While there, he laid a wreath at the shrine of where Marcus Garvey's body had been re-entombed. And in so doing, Dr. King said, and I quote, Marcus Garvey was the first man of color in the history of the United States to lead and develop a mass movement. He was the first man on a mass scale and level to give millions of Black people a sense of dignity, destiny, and somebodiness. I believe if Dr. King had survived his assassination in 1968, he would probably have spent some time in apartheid South Africa in the 1970s and 80s, working with Bishop Tutu, the African National Congress, the Pan-African Congress, and other indigenous groups and movements in the struggle to free Nelson Mandela and secure the freedom and democracy for the Black people in South Africa through nonviolence. Through these efforts, we may very well have seen Nelson Mandela freed and elected the first president of South Africa a decade earlier in the 1980s. It's ironic that in the first year that the third Monday in January was designated as an annual federal holiday in King's honor, January 20th, 1986, was the same year that a mass movement of Black people in the streets of America led to the United States Senate overriding President Reagan's veto of sanctions against South Africa on October 2nd, 1986. This was done by a vote of 78 to 21, which was 11 votes more than the 2/3 required to override a presidential veto. But that's how we roll. Contrast our effective and dignified exercise of what Dr. King would say is the right to protest for right with the unruly, unpatriotic, and insurrectionist actions of the white supremacists in Washington, D.C. 2 weeks ago. But let's not get distracted. On that historical day in Washington, D.C., August 28, 1963, when Martin Luther King ended his visionary speech by saying, "That will be the day when we will be able to say, in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, great God Almighty, we are free at last." Perhaps Dr. King was looking forward to the historical day exactly 45 years in the future, on August 28, 2008, in Denver, Colorado, when a Black man fist bumped his wife, who was direct descendants of enslaved Africans, and then went before a record-breaking crowd of 84,000 people to become the first person of African ancestry to accept the nomination of his party for president of the United States. Or perhaps in that final speech, when he said, "I may not get there with you, but I know as a people we will get to the promised land," he was envisioning that auspicious occasion 48 hours from now, when a Black woman who, like himself, graduated from an historically Black university, will raise her hand and take the oath of Vice President of the United States, becoming the first woman in American history to do so. But I believe that Dr. King envisioned something much bigger than either of these two epic events. When he said in that fateful and final speech, one day before his passing, "God has allowed me to go up to the mountaintop, and I have looked over, and I've seen the promised land," I believe at that moment, Dr. King became conscious of the mission of the Pan-African Federalist Movement to bring the United African States into political existence, 47 years before the movement itself came into being in 2015. I believe that Dr. King knew that the birth of the United States of Africa would signal the reemergence of Africa as a world power that would be the master of its own destiny, able to manage the vast resources of Africa for the benefit of African people worldwide, and fully capable of dealing with all of the global powers that be from a position of strength. Accordingly, I believe that the promised land of freedom that Martin Luther King saw was a day in this decade, a few years from now, when the Black United States Senator from Georgia, who is pastor of Dr. King's own Ebenezer Baptist Church, will stand with all of us to bear witness to the first president of the United States of Africa raise her hand to take the oath of office. On that note, I'd end with the words of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who so profoundly influenced the young 28-year-old Dr. King during his visit to Ghana in 1957. "Africa must unite, now, period. And yes, there may be some difficult days ahead, but make no mistake about it, we shall overcome." Welcome to the celebration of the International MLK Day of Service. Asante Sana, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Brother Amsada. That was wonderful, and you gave us some insight on Dr. King that I'm sure a lot of us did not know. I would like to now reintroduce the wonderful vocalist we heard at the top of our program, Lisbeth. She's a stage artist, producer, musicologist, and is active in the art and culture sector. She is curious and deepens herself in philosophy, spirituality, and development. Lisbeth lives in Suriname. So without further ado, Lisbeth, we're going to talk about your service and struggle of independence in your home, Suriname.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Delia, for inviting me in this wonderful program. Dear friends, brothers and sisters, wherever you are, shalom. A respectful, silent greeting and very special thanks to our illuminators, our heroes, our ancestors until the seventh generation. We are grateful that we can receive so much knowledge, love, insight, inspiration, spiritual and material wealth to rise and shine, but also to help others to a special thanks to the workers of the Supreme Being, the Most High, on our path that have truly inspired us and empathetically continue to impart us the knowledge.
Uh-oh, do we have some technical difficulties?
For the protection and the
Yes,
strength.
it was sounding
Thank
shaky.
you, the Most High.
Can you hear us? Are you still with us,
I am
Elizabeth?
for who I am. Brothers and sisters, brothers and sisters, the goodwill factor.
We can't hear her or see her. Did she drop?
We'll take a look.
I could see her, but she's frozen.
Oh. Ms. Smith, your connection is bad. I know over here I can barely hear you. How about everybody else? Oh, someone said try turn off your video because that does take up less bandwidth.
I have to turn off my video.
We can see you. Your video's on.
Now we can
I
hear.
should turn. I should
Turn
turn
off
it
your
off.
video and just do audio. Yes. Let's try that.
Yes. Okay. I can continue?
Yes, continue,
Okay.
please.
The goodwill factor. You know, community service is.
Can everybody hear her?
Yes, we can hear her.
They're saying they can hear you. It sounds better. Just proceed, please.
Okay. Wherein the energy of life giving and taking is balanced out. We will take a look at the even and odd balance, the pro and cons between the giver and the recipient, and the goodwill factor. What and of the one who elevates you spiritually and materially? What is the blueprint of the giver? What is the plan? What is the plan? What is the blueprint of the recipient? What should the result be? Let us observe the giver. Excuse me. Let's observe the giver. Yes, dear brothers and sisters, let's observe the giver. In the first place, nature, the wind, the sun, the moon, the water, the trees, and animals. The second place, the human being, the elderly, men and women, the young, children. There's a group saying because we are taught to give. For example, many saying exist. Who give will also receive. Who does good, who meets good, or do good and don't look back. You must give. Otherwise, you have no room to receive. Sometimes we think that we haven't, that we have given a lot. But what is the meaning of giving? What is our fundamental thought of giving? What is the energy we vibrate? Are you granted someone based on pure love, respect, honesty, and prosperity? Let us observe the recipient. Sometimes, solicited or unsolicited, something is given to you, a gift, a box with secondhand articles, a container with discarded items, but also a scholarship, an education, knowledge, money, a meal, a book, a compliment, but also a form of belief. Sometimes you receive so much, but at the same time, structurally, a lot is taken from you. What is the purpose? What is the energy? What is the vibration? What is the fundamental thought of the recipient? Who makes a sacrifice? Who feels the sacrifice? Who is the victim? Some people must learn to give. Men, women, children, we all must learn to give, but also learn to receive. What to receive and how to receive. We must know that spiritual and material wealth is our for the taking. Also, we must know that we are not victims or that we can't be into victims again. Sometimes, or perhaps very often, this energy threatens to take over as part of the plan. Giving, service. Why do we give? Do you give to repeat every day after today that you have given and what you have given? Do you give to exercise power over the one you gave? That one that gives determines. Shouldn't the recipient sometimes be more careful about what they receive? Do you always have to accept what is given or offered to you? Do you give so that other person can rise and shine? What is the blueprint in life? In my native language, Saranantongo, they would say, Imdaai, stay woke, which applies to both the giver and the recipient. Because the goodwill factor differs from person to person, nearby, far away, family, social context, the community in which we live, but especially with political leaders close by and world leaders who do not know the goodwill factor as an essential human component, even though they preach and teach it. Giving and receiving can be destructive and even promote spiritual poverty, but it can certainly be enriching and prosperous. Life is giving and taking, even though some people think it's only giving and some people think it's only receiving. But the goodwill factor is an important aspect in giving and receiving. How strong is the goodwill factor in you? How strong is the goodwill factor in me? Is it sincerely granted to you? Can you honestly say to yourself, it has been granted to me? Balance or no balance, everything has an effect on the human being. But we are capable of giving the best and receiving the best. On this special day, we must once again remind and inspire each other for the umpteenth time. But we must continue to do it, to learn from our predecessors who carried a high degree of goodwill factor within them and what it means to us. What has worked and what hasn't worked, and what still doesn't work. We have to be patient with each other, forgiving due to ignorance, and especially in that eye, stay woke. Let us carry on with the good intention of sharing, because giving and receiving is sharing. Let us continue, but let our blueprint be based on the pureness of the goodwill factor to rise, and shine, inspired by the spiritual source of our supreme being, the Most High. Our brother, the Honorable Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., had a great suggestion of how to design our life's blueprint.
This is the most important and crucial period of your lives, for what you do now and what you decide now at this age may well determine which way your life shall go. And the question is whether you have a proper, a solid, and a sound blueprint. And I want to suggest some of the things that should be in your life's blueprint. Number one, in your life's blueprint should be a deep belief in your own dignity, your own worth, and your own somebodyness. Don't allow anybody to make you feel that you are nobody. Always feel that you count. Always feel that you have worth. And always feel that your life has ultimate significance. Secondly, in your life's blueprint, you must have, as a basic principle, the determination to achieve excellence in your various fields of endeavor. You're going to be deciding as the days and the years unfold what you will do in life, what your life's work will be. Once you discover what it will be, set out to do it, and to do it well. Be a bush if you can't be a tree. If you can't be a highway, just be a trail. If you can't be the sun, be a star. For it isn't by size that you win or you fail. Be the best of whatever you are. And finally, in your life's blueprint must be a commitment to the eternal principles of beauty, love, and justice. Well, life for none of us has been a crystal stair, but we must keep moving. We must keep going. If you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl, but by all means, keep moving.
Thank you all very much.
Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth. And actually, I misspoke as far as your title, Pros and Cons of a Giver and a Receiver. And thank you so much. And it's someone told me a long time ago that a closed hand can't receive. So if you're trying to hold on something so tightly, you're not able to receive what's out there for you. So thank you so much. And our last panelist today hails right here from Ghana. And his name is Amu Baskau. I hope I'm not butchering once again. The organization is Musician Union of Ghana, and it was established in 1975, and it currently has 4,500 members, but it represents 30 musicians. And the mission statement is promoting and preserving Ghanaian culture through educating and equipping the Ghanaian musician to be self-reliant, creative, and industrious. So without any further ado, Uma. Are you there? Hello? Oma? Pascal, can you hear us? I hope it's not that Ghanaian internet acting up. Haki, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, sister. What's going on? I think the gentleman is
So,
still
yeah.
on. So
Yeah, I
maybe
see
he's
him. But
having some chat. Okay.
yeah.
Perhaps, is he unmuted? Lower left-hand corner, unmute, Baba. He may be reconnecting. Okay,
Oh, he's reconnecting.
possibly. Let's see.
Okay. So
Well, in the
while
meantime,
he's reconnecting, if we have any questions for the panelists, can we open those up and people place in the chat box any questions you may want to ask any of our esteemed panelists today? Questions or comments? You've been making wonderful comments as they were speaking. Any questions at all?
I'm gonna ask one. On the Quelly. I'm trying to. Hold on.
Okay, who's speaking?
Questions are in the chat box.
On the Quelly, so we do have a question. I'm sorry. I think, let me see if it's in there. I don't see it. I thought I saw a question. Well, I believe there was a question about how do we move from civil rights to human rights? Anyone can take that question, if anyone cared to elaborate on
that. Brother
or
Sada?
is there a difference?
It is a difference. Malcolm X talked about human rights. That it's a human rights struggle because human rights, if you don't have human rights, you don't have civil rights. Civil rights is both basically your rights within the Constitution of the United States. Human rights are your global rights. Your rights as being a human being, as Malcolm X would say. So that's the distinction. I think that at this point, we need to be thinking about our African humanity from a global scale and what rights we have as an African people. There are 1.3 billion Africans on the continent. And our primary struggle now is to regain our sovereignty. We have 55 independent states, but their sovereignty is being compromised by the
Okay, is it just me or did he freeze?
No, yeah, he froze.
Chinese and by virtue.
Okay, you froze, Brother Sada.
Okay, I don't know at which point I froze. I didn't realize I had.
I think you were saying something about the Chinese, maybe.
Oh, okay. I was saying, okay, I explained the difference between human rights and civil rights. And I used Malcolm X, Omowale Malcolm X, son who's come home. That's the name he was given when he went to Nigeria. I like to use Omowale Malcolm.
Oh, he keeps freezing. All right.
Malcolm X. Omowale. Oh, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, you keep freezing, and I'm doing better than you, and I'm in Ghana, and you in the U.S.
Yeah, I don't know.
Freezing up on us
because I see myself constantly talking, so I'm not aware.
Yeah.
Can you see me now?
No, you good now. Come on.
Yes.
You wanna?
All right. Well, let me see if I can just be brief. The question was the difference between human rights and civil rights. And I said that civil rights is a domestic concern within the American Constitution of the United States. Our rights underneath the Constitution, whereas human rights is your rights, as Malcolm would say, as a being. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Your rights as a human being. Human rights are larger than the rights you were born with, and they're global. And then I talked a little bit about African humanity, the 1.3 billion Africans throughout the world, and our rights, and being able to protect our rights and our own sovereignty, which is the primary struggle for African people at this point, which is to begin to create a political entity which can represent the 1 billion African people throughout the world, so that we could address the powers that be, whether they be China, Europe, United States, even from a position of strength. And that way, that's the guarantee of that we'll be able to protect the human rights of African people throughout the world. So I guess I maybe elaborated a little bit on your question, but I hope I gave you a direct answer.
Okay, thank you so much. It looks like we may have Ayuma back on. Are you there, Ayuma Bosco? I see him on the screen, his picture, but he may not be there. Okay.
He's muted.
All right. All right, Haki, should we wrap things up now?
I guess we can. Everyone has gone, right? So thank you, everybody, on behalf of the Teaching Artists Institute. Let me just kind of put my face here. Yes.
Njia was to present what he's doing in Kenya for the human rights. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Oh, good. Great.
Yes, he will present very quickly.
Okay.
G here.
Good afternoon.
I guess it doesn't come natural. Like just.
Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. My name is Njihia. And I think let me just start by saying thank you so much for the several presentations which have been done. I'm struggling a bit on my echo. I think I'm using my laptop and my phone. My phone for the image and my laptop for basically for just following up on the charts. And so let me just start by saying my name is Njehia. I'm from Kenya. I'm an entrepreneur, a social entrepreneur for that matter. I by training, I'm a marketer, and I've cut across several industries. I've worked in the. Hello, you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, so by training, I was a marketer, and by professionally, I've worked across the industries in the IT for 3 years, brewing for 10 years, banking for 3 years, and now construction for about 10 years. So essentially, as a social entrepreneur, cutting across those industries and running a business successfully, which from a project into a business accoladed as the biggest innovation in Africa, that is from EABL, and then jumping on to start also my own businesses. And just last year in 2020, handed over the construction industry to start to jump into fintech. And hopefully that is my second last project before leaving Earth, and having to ask myself quite a number of questions in the process of my existence. And jumping into breweries, back to breweries is, I asked a question while trying to connect to the consumer of the brand, knowing that truly I'm not sending the correct information, in the sense that we are telling the consumers responsible drinking, while I want, in essence, for them to drink as much as possible so that we can make as much money as possible. And so, as a follower of Jesus on one hand, and as a seller of alcohol on the other hand, and asking the question about the presentation of alcohol and the church, I think I resorted to start a bar, which is a church. And that was in 2007. So the hardest thing, because I look at sustainable projects, the profits from the bar would support the ministry. And that has been like, so within the bar, there is a pastor's office, basically to engage men. And the man who was described by this brand for my brand communication was a hardworking, irresponsible man. Hardworking, this guy rises up at 5, works for 2 hours to get a job. He's a wager. He may get $5 to $10 in a day, then works for another 2 hours, lives in a 10 by 10, is married, has a kid or 2 kids. And so my heart went out to men, looking at men who are not taking their responsibilities in their homes. And so over the last now 14 years, we've managed to reach out to about 400 men. And some of these men have come back into the bar to help other men who are already transformed. And in essence, it's just get them out, disciple them. If they decide to join other local churches, so be it. If they decide to come and help, so be it. And out of these, the guys who did for me the interior works so that they could convert the church into a bar were students. And one of them, I mentioned to him, just in case you finish school, you're employed, you're tired, come and look for me. That time I had left breweries, I was working in a bank. The guy came, Joe here, hi, you asked me to look for you, and I'm now ready. In 2010, we started a company, and that's Sahihi. And so my company started from the bar. I had to close so many other businesses that I was doing to focus on this one. Now, which celebrated 10 years anniversary last year. And so why I'm here and to share my story is I find myself everywhere I am asking the question, what can I do for you, God, while I'm in this place? And so along that journey, I have worked with various communities, and one of them is a Pokot East community, a place in the Bundus whereby there are always conflict with the neighbors, the Pokot, Turkanas, and Samburus. These are 3 communities who are pastoralists, and they are always fighting. And they are fighting for resources. And so it's to work with the leaders, local leaders who are there, so that they can bring a semblance of peace. And some of these would be run for education, so that looking at a generation which would come maybe in 20 years to come, they look at life differently and stop the wars. And that again, for about 16 years, once a year, we go there just to encourage and work with the local leaders. And I liked what Njeri talked about the women. We find that because it's so patriarchal kind of community, women are the ones who are most responsive. But the progress would be so little because there's no support of the men. And I think, Ishmael, I hope you can be sharing some of these images of the Pokot East as even as we unfold on this. The other thing is the question again, what can I do while I'm in this place? And I find myself quite busy. Within, again, Sahihi, we find that we, over the last 3 years now, we've been doing a marathon in coffee and tea growing areas, where you find that the owners of the coffee estates are so rich and the workers are so poor. And in between, there are iron-fisted managers who oversee the poor workers as they work. And there are schools which are domiciled within these estates, and the kids for these poor workers go to these schools, primary school, secondary school, and then they fall back into the same cycle. And so what we do, we engage all the 3. That is the parents for the kids themselves, and the owners of the farms. And how we do this for the kids, we sponsor 2 from a marathon, a run that we have once a year. From the money that we raise, we pay for school fees for a bright student who is within those communities who is also poor. And currently we have two, one at a university within Mount Kenya region, another one within the Nairobi area, and one doing IT, the other one doing BEd. And these are two different courses, but that has happened for the last 2 years. This year we didn't have a run, but we called it COVID run because it was just the staff. There was no cash award for the winning students. For the estate owners, we plant trees, and for the parents, we train on permaculture because the land is occupied, the whole land is occupied by coffee or tea. And so there is no room for growing anything. So permaculture would be bags just outside their small houses and grow some vegetables to supplement on their other income, basically. And that is Sahel Green Run, which we do once a year, and that is under our organization. We were at one time responding every Saturday to feed the parking boys, but just a bun and some porridge. They're sleeping out in the cold and just something to keep them warm. And these were stopped again by the county government saying, this is their work, you can't help us. I mean, we have homes where we feed these guys, but also the police. There were sources of insecurity because gathering 100 students or kids, parking boys, would be a good avenue for the drug sellers, and they would come and, you know, that would be a good market for them. So again, the police halted that. With COVID-19, that was last year, we started feeding families, 30 families every Wednesday in the afternoon. And just this is as a response to the things which are happening within our community. And these 30 families, before COVID, already poverty was quite hard on them. And so with COVID, we just put together 3 kilos of flour, 1 cabbage, and some just modest cooking fat. And every week we would give, one family. And I think, again, those photos are rolling out there. Would go identify their homes, give them a voucher, then they go to a central place just to collect these. And that would cost only $2. For the 3 kilos, it's 150 shillings, a cabbage is 35 bob, and a modest 17 bob, the cooking fat. And I think that would push them maybe 3-4 days before it runs out and they would seek from elsewhere. In 2014, because of the bad church, I got identified by Tia Fund UK and a program called Inspired Individuals. And these were people who are doing transformational stuff within their communities. And so I was put into this program. And within the program, I met other people around the world who are doing different transformational things. And after the 3-year program, I got connected with Kevin. Kevin was the founder of Philemon Foundation. He was imprisoned, released after 7 years, started going back to prison with tissues and soap just to take back to the guys who are in prison. And in so doing, Kevin, out of that, started a foundation and a halfway home, because someone who is jailed, one, within Kenya, they are not accepted in the society just that easily, because he's still viewed as a murderer, he's still viewed as a rapist, as a, whatever crime he committed. Yet this guy may have transformed while he was incarcerated. And so after the 3 years, we were challenged to collaborate. And the collaboration is Kevin to look at something that I am good at, and I look at something that Kevin is good at, and Kevin comes to Metameta, the bar church, and I go to his prisons ministry, and I help him within his prisons ministry. And so I started training the inmates who are about to be released 0 to 1 year on how to start small businesses. And this was because once you're released in Kenya, you cannot be employed by government. And by extension, you can also not be employed, find any job within the private sector. So this guy leaves, and up to 70% of them reoffend to go back to the prisons. And again, my focus has been men. The reason being because it's hard to reach out to a man, to transform a man. But once you do, the chances of that man influencing a family is up to 5 times, as opposed to a lady, which is only 17% of that. And so my focus on spending time with men is to see that these men go back to the family, take their responsibilities, as a provider, securing the family and doing all that men are supposed to do. And so I've done this since 2014. But Kevin left and went back to his hometown. So because it's something that I was loving to do within the business, I went back to the director of the welfare, and she allowed me to go in. And over the last 2 years, we've done 6 prisons. I do twice a year, and a third one just to reinforce and to make sure that when these guys leave, they go to start those small businesses. So essentially, I train them how to start from zero. How to start from zero, because this girl was married, wife left, the kids was 2 years old, now it's 17 years old, kid at school, your father is a man. So the kid hates the extension, who doesn't know that father or that.
Hello.
So, sorry.
Hello. Yes, we need to. I mean, you're doing wonderful work, but we have to wrap this up. I mean, it's really getting late in some places. But we appreciate you, I mean, all the work you do. And we, of all the panelists, we've been posting websites and other contacts. If anyone has any questions on how to contact, please post it in the chat box. But I know we've been doing this about 2 hours and it's been wonderful. I mean, we have such powerful people who are doing such great work, and Dr. King will definitely be proud, and so would so many other ancestors for what we're doing. So it's not just history, we're doing things now. So any last words? I don't know if Kim is still on. She's been quiet. Or Delia, Haki, you have any last words?
She's been listening and advising from the background here.
Yeah, I know. Yes, I've been listening. I didn't know she wanted to say something, make her presence known.
Okay. Maybe not.
Yeah, I put my websites and contact information up. I'm getting ready to put up my email address.
Oh, great. Thank you, Bob.
I put 2 websites, one for the Pan-African Fellows Movement in North America and my own personal website. And I put up my business card, and I'm getting ready to put up my email. This is Brother Amsada, Coordinator, Pan-African Fellows Movement, North America. And thank you for the opportunity. This has been a great.
Sante Sana.
Yes, thank you. It has been great. We have learned a lot of history. We know that people are serving their communities, and it's an example for us also to serve in our own history. Thank you also, Anopale, for taking this challenge. You've done a fantastic job all the way from Ghana. Okay.
So thank you so much. And I thank thank the ancestors of Most High for keeping the internet strong and going. And I'd like to thank all the participants who joined us here this afternoon and this evening. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, bye.
Bye.